Hey guys, welcome to Printrbot Live. You're the first to arrive, so welcome. Thank you. All 7 people. And do they know there's 7 people? It's no secret. I just wondered if it's like only 7 people are here. Do they know?
Do they know what?
If how many people are in the room?
I think you can see that.
Oh, that's cool. So say hello to your 7 friends. If you have a question, it's always good to ask it now. That gives Dave time to consider if it's something he wants me to answer. But we're doing a little mic check right now. Mic check. Because last week we had some kind of a hum. So we've turned off the lights and we're experimenting with a couple of audio channels here to see if we can get a better audio feed. So, and then we also have as a backup, am I framed like over here only? I don't know if I am. But anyway, I just don't want to wander if you can't see me. We do have a room mic that we can use if the hum continues on the mic.
Not as bad as it was last week.
But there's still a little bit, huh?
There's always a little bit of white noise.
Yeah? White noise meaning?
Just a little hiss.
Little hiss? Is it like a low?
No, it's higher. Higher than.
I wonder if we turn out the lights. Do you want to try it?
Now it's back a little bit.
I'm curious. Here's what I'm like without lighting. Does it have any effect on the audio?
Let's see.
Hello, audio hum check.
Maybe a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, you have to see the scars on my face, so we got to get the lights on. All right. Well, it's 4:32, and I am ready to show you something that's kind of fun. You know, I've been talking about the Adoptabot. We have stuff to talk about, but it's just gonna be a little housekeeping this week on Adoptabot and give you a little update of where we are and where we're going. I've also got a couple of little news items, an email to read, and this little experiment to show you. But then we'll end up looking at a new printer that is taking shape today and probably be moving tomorrow. So anyway, that's what we're going to do in this show. So, welcome. This is Printrbot Live. I'm Brooke Drum, CEO, founder of Printrbot. And I was telling my wife this morning that CEO of a small company like this means absolutely nothing. Because she was asking, do other CEOs, are they as stressed out and like working as hard as you do? And I was like, I mean, think of a CEO of a small business, like a guy that has a flower shop or started a restaurant. Where do you go in and the guy says, I'd like to speak to the CEO? Where is he going to be found? He's going to be in the back, like cooking every day at dinner time. You know what I mean? So that's me. That's my life. But I'm glad you're here. This community involvement, real people on the other end of the interwebs or email or Twitter is always a reminder like, hey, we're doing something that matters to people, and especially with the Adoptabot stuff, getting a lot of traffic from that. It's not traffic I care about. Behind that traffic is people doing great things for their local schools. That's what I'm really excited about. And of course, people just enjoy this hobby, and I love it, so it's fun to have you guys here every week. So, I'm over here, Dave. Are you following me? Do we need to... Okay, I'm off to the side. Let's move the camera a little bit or something. We have a fancy camera, but it's probably better to just show you what we have right here. And I'm going to ask Dave in a second to help me out. So he's going to make a cameo on screen here. So what I have is a Kinovo silicone heat pad. And it's rather big. In fact, it's too big. Has some 3M adhesive on the bottom. And I just got this off of Amazon.com. It's funny how, sourcing here at Printrbot's been a long, we need to sit down and have a beer if you want to hear the full story of sourcing at Printrbot. But it's painful. I've never done it before. But it's interesting with Amazon.com, they have really been aggressive in carrying a lot of the stuff that I sell. Now, I don't mean that I sell it. I mean other people have been using the Amazon.com channel, is what my CFO calls it when you sell stuff online. So I actually sourced this, not through China, trying to talk to somebody and a language they're not familiar with. That's really what happens, by the way, when you go on, what is that one site, AliExpress or Alibaba? And back in the day when we used to try to look for stuff, you'd have to show up at 7 p.m. at night, and there was always a language barrier. And you know, you try to ask them a hard question like, how much does this cost? Oh, what price do you like? You know, they were very excited to help us. Whatever you need. What price? We'll do it good. So it was confusing. Now, a lot of the times when I'm doing R&D, I get on Amazon.com. This is not a plug for Amazon, by the way. I'm a Prime member, so I get shipping stuff really quick. They just did a new, I don't know what you call it, distribution center in Sacramento. So stuff is ridiculously fast, and the prices are really pretty good. So this Kinovo silicon heat pad comes in a lot of varieties, different voltages, sizes. And the reason I want it is because we're doing these larger machines. And our PCB heater, which if you go back 6 years to the beginning of RepRap, a lot of people use PCB heaters. Well, some of them have moved to this. Like Deltas, they have like a round, triangle-ish heat pad that they can use. Well, this company does standard sizes and also custom sizes. So I can call them and get a custom size. So I thought before I do that with a longer lead time and sometimes minimum order requirement on units to get the pricing where I need it, it's great to just try what they got, so what they have. So that's what we're doing here. So check this out. This may be a surprise to you, but you can't really see it. It's on the floor to reach my power. But this is a regular printer board. And since F6 I know of, even going back to Rev D, which was, we actually had a Rev B. I know this because cleaning up my shop to get rid of all my junk, I ran across all of my bad boards. And I thought it was like way more than I actually have. It's not that many. But I mean, I have a few hundred boards, and they span across all of the models. I even have models that I hand soldered through hole, Sanguina Lalu, that I hand soldered at my table at home during the Kickstarter to try to get a bot farm going. So I've got old boards, weird boards, Rev B, Rev D, did we do F? I think we did a plain F and then quickly went to like F5, I don't know, F5, F4, and then F5, F6. There are always little small changes, but way back in the beginning when Lane Walker, Walker, anyway, he has two last names. Lane is awesome, he's a genius, he was in my meetup group. He designed the board. And when we were talking about voltage, he said, well, you know, ATX power supplies are ubiquitous. You can find an ATX all over the world. They power computers, and that's, back then, desktop computers were still very common. And so I said, yeah, let's go 12 volts, and that's what we did. But he put the circuitry in there to handle 19 volts. And I was like, why 19? Well, a lot of laptops, for laptop power supplies, you get more voltage, it's less amps, and you can do more power with more voltage. So that's a loaded kind of a statement. But anyway, so he did 19. And then later I thought, well, not everybody, but some people were moving to 24 volts. So I had my electronics guy at the time just, you know, add the components we need. And every component that you put on an electronics board is rated for whatever it needs to be rated for. Voltage, amperage, resistance, like all of these things. So I just added, secretly, I added the components to make the input power on the printer board except up to 24 volts. I actually think it goes above that, but I've only tried it with 24 volts. So you could go to your Printrbot right now if you have a Rev F. I don't know that I would try this on anything older than a Rev F5 or 6. By the way, the only difference between those two is we dropped the, what was it? What was that? I2C or I2C. We had a header on there. We dropped some headers, but we also added a second fan in the F6. So that's the big change. The digital pots were added along the way. So there was some light changes. So the same firmware works across all of these recent printers because we went to digital pots fairly quickly. But anyway, so if you have an F5 or 6, you could plug in a 24-volt power supply to the printer. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, if you've got a big heat bed that you want to power, I know this is kind of getting geeky right off the bat, so forgive me. But I'm going somewhere with this. Everything would be fine except that your hot end is going to heat up really fast off of 24 volts. In fact, probably too fast, and it's going to be unpredictable. So to move to 24 volts, you really have to move your hot end and heat bed to 24 volts. So over the years, I've done, a couple dozen different heat beds. I like the PCB because they're cheap. I could get them from China for probably, $6, $8, depending on the size. But then you got to add your wires and thermistor and all that. So it was just the way we did it with 12 volts. And it's very, very difficult. In fact, with our Pro, we started out without a heat bed because we could not find the right resistance on the heat bed to properly, get that sweet spot of the 100C that a lot of people expect when they have a heat bed. So anyway, PCB heat beds are a pain in the butt, and 12-volt heat beds are even worse because they suck the power. Like our Plus, we did a large heat bed. That thing would suck down 18 amps. And for those of you that don't understand, you have to have a pretty powerful power supply. You could never do a heat bed of any kind, really, even the little 4x4 square thing that I did on the old Maker's kit. That thing sucks so much power, you can't use a laptop power supply. And that was the benefit of going 12 volts. Small, cheap power supplies. And now you're up into, if you want to add a heat bed, an ATX. Well, I hate ATX power supplies. I threw a bunch of them away this week. They're less and less common because desktop computers aren't as common anymore, and the pricing has gone up on those parts that people don't want to sell anymore because everybody's carrying a laptop. So what we've done is secretly made the printer board work with 24 volts. What's the advantage? Well, if you have a 24-volt heat bed, you could power it, but when you get up to this size, there's no way. It's still too big. And power supplies like, for instance, the Xbox, I think 360, they had basically shoved a ATX power supply. I'm making generalizations. But they shoved a really powerful power supply into this box and called it, kind of like a desktop style or laptop style. That thing was huge. It had problems of overheating and all this. Well, when you move to 24 volts, that power supply gets smaller. So I like small power supplies. So the power supply I have here, I don't really think you can see it. It's about that big. So it is kind of large. But instead of putting an ATX on your desk with, say, a Simple with a heat bed, this would be really nice. But we've never sold a hot end with 24 volts. Well, that is actually coming. Talked to Carl yesterday, and I say we, what do? I pick up the phone, and Carl does the work on the hot ends. Because of this prosthetic bot wanting to go faster, more volumetric throughput, we want to print fast. He's doing a lot of extrusion that is spiral, and he does 2x over extrusion on the walls, believe it or not. Which kind of makes things crazy if you have infill, but he's doing spiral prints, so it's fine. So he gets one layer really thick, and I think I've told the story about when we printed that one prosthetic leg part, and me and Carl, we stood on it. We couldn't break it, and it was one wall. But it was 3 or 4 millimeters wide because he was doing 2x extrusion. So anyway, we've got the signal from Jeff at Create O&P that he really does want not just a custom printer that he can rely on from a reputable company instead of like a Chinese company or an upstart. We've been around a while, and we do a good job of supporting Jeff. So Create O&P is going to move towards really powerful hot ends. Now they're going to sell a 45-watt hot end that's custom made for them, and you won't be able to buy that unless you buy their printer and you're a prosthetics guy. We are doing what I'm going to call the Printrbot Plus Pro that is similar to the prosthetic bot, but we're just going to put the UBIS 12-volt HF on it. And we have this one that I'm going to show you in a little bit at the end of the show that he calls the 5400. It's roughly 1 foot by 1.5 foot by 24 inches tall, and I'll show you what that looks like. But that one is another kind of SKU for him that is really for larger prosthetic needs. A back brace for like a third world country. We're going to send this first one to Nepal, who has this amazing program for prosthetics. They help so many people. But the needs of that are very big, and that one is going to get his special one as well. But if I sell this, it'll get the HF. Our Plus Pro is actually going to be the one model that I sell right off the bat at 24 volts, powered just like this little unit here. And to get around the heat bed problem, we're going to use an AC heat bed from Kinovo, and then we're going to use a 24 volt hot end. So that provides lots of power to the hot end, and you will be able to go fast if you want to. But here's why we want 24 volts. We want 24 volts on the hot end because this hot end is a high temperature hot end. It's going to be the follow-on, the successor in the, or kind of like the flagship, I should say. The flagship of our hot end line. You have to have 24 volts. You have to have an AC heat bed because we want all the power to be available to the motors and the hot end. And so it'll be very responsive, but the other thing it will do is it will function all the way up to 450 C. Now that's a lot. It's very, very hot. And it will finally be able to, I've dreamed about a hot end that we could sell in the store that for people that want to extrude Peak or Ultim, that is now not only going to be possible, but it's going to be possible in a high temp. So it'll have the high flow features of the high flow. But instead of we sell a 30-ish, 33 watt high flow hot end that theoretically you could run off a laptop power supply without a heat bed. But if you're doing large, fast prints, you probably want a heat bed, so you'll need an ATX. So, or at least a more powerful power supply. And we've replaced our ATX with a power supply that is 350 watts, and we're testing a 450 watt. It's a Meanwell. It's a reputable brand available in the U.S. with CE certification and everything. But anyway, so all that to say, so here I am playing around with this heat bed and getting ready for my 24 volt hot end. So I got the printer board here with a 24 volt power supply, and when you power an AC heat bed, a lot of people, it's funny because we Googled this week because it's been a while since I've done this. I did this years ago with Caleb. But, I've always thought, well, if we're going to go to AC, it's got to be hard, right? And so I remember doing it, and those little temperature modules that come with some of these heat beds, they're super confusing. It's got all these settings, and you got to learn how to program it, and it's this little digital readout. And it may sound nice to have your heat bed kind of offline, not interrupting the printer, so you'd slice with no heat bed, and it would just power your hot end. And then you do the hot end or the heat bed separately with this little unit that controls the temperatures. Well, some people like that. I don't, and here's why. When your print is done, it's because some of these big prints, fast prints, big, these big printers that we're making, when it's done, you want to just have the peace of mind that the heat bed turns itself off. Well, you cannot do that, to my knowledge, with just the heat bed running off that little temperature module. So when I was talking to Carl, he said, well, just use a SSR, that's a solid state relay, and that's what this is right here. Now, there's a lot of solid state relays that have DC to DC. In other words, you trigger the relay, which there's no moving parts in there. I have a heat sink on it because it could generate some heat in the switching, but there's no moving parts, so it will not fail. But when you have a relay, you hear this tick, 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 because it's a mechanical arm that like flicks back and forth as like a light switch, turning on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off. And that has wear and tear because it's mechanical. This doesn't have that. So we have a little heat sink. This is a Photech solid-state relay, the SSR 40. I believe that is up to 40 amps. DA-H. And I know there's a few models depending on how much current you're pulling, but that's the one that I've tested with this one. So here's how you hook that up. We actually have AC power going to this, so don't touch those two things. That's one thing that I liked about just having 12 volts. It's not really dangerous. When you add AC, it gets like you need to protect it, put it in a box, make sure people are safe. But I mean, when you buy a toaster, it's the same thing. Like, don't stick your hand down in the toaster. But anyway, so it's a solid-state relay. It gets power So it runs power straight to one terminal. And the other terminal is actually going to the heat bed, but it's switched by that solid-state relay. So what tells the relay to turn it on and off? You actually plug in the FET, which is also like a switch, that the printer board uses to turn on the heat. Now, oddly, gosh, this is too much detail, Dave. I've just lost Dave. He just doesn't care about solid-state relays at all. Anyway, that FET is rated for 75 amps. So I think it's actually might even be rated for 100, but we might have dropped to 75. I'd have to check the BOM. But anyway, it's a very powerful FET, and it had no problem with the plus heat bed with all the power. But what's nice is on rep wraps, what's weird, I mean, not nice, is that it actually switches. It leaves the power on the printer board. The power side, or at least the positive side of the power, is giving a constant 12 volts. It switches the ground. Now, there's reasons for that I would need Carl or Lane here to explain why. But anyway, so the heat bed FET on the printer board tells the solid-state relay, give the AC power. All right, I've said enough. We've actually managed to keep 10 people through that big diatribe. All right, so Dave, let's get to the fun part. You stick your hand on this. You stick your hand on that hotbed. Now, if you know our printers, a PCB heat bed is slow. Let's see how fast this is. So I'm going to move this to 100C, 100. And I'm going to, tell me when you feel it heating up. I just hit the button. Is it working? Oh, there it is. I feel it warm. Now keep your hand on there until, it's just too hot. You don't want to burn yourself.
That's pretty hot to the touch.
Okay, don't burn yourself. That is hot. Now, did you see how fast that was? But when you have 110 volts coming out of the wall, going right into that heat bed, it heats up fast. I even feel it on my face. Like, I feel the radiant heat already. I can feel it right there. I mean, we could cook an egg on this thing, and it's only at, we're about to hit, where's the readout? That's 65 C. So where there were some printers I've had that you might have waited 5-10 minutes for that heat bed to like slowly come up. But if you look at the graph, it's not like, it's like doink, 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 doink. It's going very, very fast. So this is very responsive, and we need a big heater like this. And by the way, it's 600 watts. We need a big heater because this big printer we have has a big old Mic 6 bed on it that's a 1.5 feet wide and a foot deep. So really, I need to cover all of the surface uniformly, I would want a custom made, but we're going to stick this on it to test. All right, was there a question? I'll pause here. Was there a question that anybody had concerning the printer board at 24 volts, the new hot end, these silicone heat beds? You could buy one of these right now, and instead of your slow heat up time, no matter what printer you have, if you don't have one of these AC heat beds, the only thing I would caution is you are dealing with AC power, which is power. I mean, if you touch AC power while standing in the bathtub, you're going to die. So it's not something you want to screw around with. But if you feel qualified to like wire a light switch in your house, turning off the power, getting everything wired, stepping away from it, protecting these open terminals so no kids can get around. If you want to add one of those, you can certainly do that. Somebody says you could also do an external MOSFET to control the heat bed through an independent power supply. I did it with my plus metal and it works wonderfully. That is totally true. The reason I like these solid states are it's 4 terminals. 2 of them get the switch or get the power from your printer board to say turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. And there's a light right on the top that actually, see, it's off right now. So in a minute, it'll cool down enough. It's fairly cool in here. And that light will come on, and it'll be heating again. But it's maintaining, man, that is hot. It's maintaining its temperature very, very easily. When using one of these, ground the printer frame. good advice. When you wire so this right here is the ground coming off my AC line. I've taped it up. I've taped all the two connections here. But we were talking earlier, me and Jeremy, that why is the green not hooked up? Well, you would want to ground the frame. This is not, this SSR, solid state relay, doesn't have a place to put the ground, so I assume he's saying ground the printer frame. And the reason why is if there's a short, you're going to trip that breaker immediately, and that's what you want to do. You know, like if you're in a kitchen or a bathroom, they have those ground faults. That connects to the earth. Your house is connected to the earth through your electrical system. And you'd want to ground that printer frame so that printer frame is connected to the earth, and so that reduces the danger. So anyway, I thought that was fun. That is going to go on this printer, which I'm going to show you in a second. I'll turn this off, and I'll get on with it to some more fun stuff. Off, off. Switch it off. Okay. So that's that. Let's go back over here. All right, so let me do one little bit of housekeeping. So I had a guy on Twitter ask me, Brooke, when you had that, what was that, Labor Day sale? When you had that Labor Day sale, I was looking forward to buying a Smalls upgrade. This is the Z upgrade. There was also, was also a bed upgrade to bring this into, because remember I put that secret screw here that gave you 2 extra inches, and so it wasn't just the 4. See how that goes out beyond? You could put basically an old simple 6x6 bed on here, the bigger piece of metal. We have heated bed upgrades too. But anyway, so you could do one of those, and you could go 6x6 by, what was this, 10 or something. And he was like, I was, wanting to buy that on the sale. And I said, well, that was about the same time we removed it from the store. And it had a very short-lived life. Why? Well, I explained that well, first of all, it didn't sell. Okay, so that's the reason to remove a product. But I realized there's some people that are kind of like, hey, I got into this because it was upgradable. So here's what I'm going to do. In order for me to order these machine parts, there's a machine part here and a machine part here for the Z-axis. And those two on the Z upgrade were pretty expensive. For me to get a lower price and have it be reasonable, because when you have a cheap bot like the Smalls, $299 for the $298. It's even cheaper than I thought. And you got an upgrade that's like $100. It's like people are like, "What are you doing?" It doesn't make any sense. So when you start with such a low bar, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to sell an expensive upgrade. So what I'm going to do is post these files for these parts. Now, if I were printing these parts, and I have some experience doing this on the Adoptabot, when you take a printer from these machine metal pieces, that are really, really rigid and make them as a printed part, you really need to beef them up. Printed parts don't have the same grip as aluminum. You can bend the aluminum and like warp the aluminum to reach around this bar. I probably couldn't get this off unless I had a 5-pound sledge with these tight plastic. You're not going to have any problem getting them off. So I would beef this part up. But I'm going to release these design files. And I've said I'd do it before, but you know me. Haven't done it. So these parts on the upgrade are going to be live. And then there was also a full kit of, instead of printed parts on these bar ends, instead of printed parts on the Z block that holds the Z rigid, there was a machine part. And it was a very large machine part. And you could see that on the LE. But I think it's time to just share all of that stuff. I should have done it in the beginning. But if you're a machinist and you want to machine your own machine part, I'm going to make sure that all of the parts for the Smalls, that all the design files are completely shared in Fusion 360. So you could do the CAM on it and order it from a machine shop. You can do it yourself, or you can just print them. Because I actually tested the machine parts in the Z block as one good example. I kind of felt bad because, like some people buy chrome for their car or a carbon fiber hood that's not really any lighter for their car. Some people upgrade because they like it. and they want it to be rigid. This particular upgrade actually adds volume, and I liked it as a machine part. But you don't really need machine parts to upgrade this bot. So I'm going to share the files. I don't have a link for you yet because I haven't done it. So I'll share all the files related with the smalls and relieve a little pressure from those disappointed that I took some of those out of the store, but why not share? All right, so that's that. Any questions on that? Bring them on.
No, just asking if you'll put the LE design files in.
Yes, I will put all of the, and if you want to make a note for me, say, Brooke, you said this, you have to do it. Yeah, so the LE files, again, I intentionally say that we're open source because what you're supposed to do, people, is publish the files when you start selling. And then I'm a bad example of my own rule, so I apologize. But yes, it was never, it's not a business decision to hold those files and hope people buy the bot. No, I want to share them. It's just I'm disorganized like you would not believe. So, okay, maybe you believe it. All right, so yes, I'll publish the LE files as well, including those machine parts. Everything will be in the file. So I'm not going to help you beyond that. I'm just going to give you the file. You can print them if you want. You can redesign them if you want. But I'm pretty much just going to put them out there. All right, Adoptabot. So this week has been fairly eventful. And the reason is I'm starting to say, hey, people, these team leaders and the folks that are volunteering, it's time to get to work. We have shipped all, by the way, did you see that note on somebody on the first round of the Adoptabot that said, hey, I didn't get my bot, what happened? It was on Twitter. I responded and said, well, there was a couple people that didn't give us the address and didn't respond. Maybe he's one of them. But, notification? So you might check Twitter to see who that guy is. But, of course, we want to do right by everybody that paid. If we can't get your bot, we'll refund your money. But now we've gone past that original, like all those crazy bots going out, all my junk, I say junk, all my non-operational printers that needed love went out. And they kind of sparked this idea that let's make it easier for schools to get printers. And hey, here's some printers, give them away. They were like 40 bucks. Some of them were retailing at $1,300. And so that was great. I got rid of some stuff and it went to good homes. And by the way, there was, in that first round, there was no like vetting. I'm like, somewhere some kid got a great deal. But that's fine. But anyway, so round two was this. We decided, hey, that was too crazy. Let's do a design that is the same for everybody. And let's get a design that is printable, a design that's a rep. Well, I thought this was going to be bigger at the beginning, but I realized the requirements for somebody to start 3D printing are really low. It's a low bar. You could get a cheap Chinese bot and learn a lot. But what I think is better is to have all of the open source files available to you. So I designed this printer, and all the files are out there. And this uses common electronics. It's a printer board electronics and a printer board hot end and a printer board extruder. So I've designed the bot. I've released the files. I've shipped the kits, and those kits were well worth over $100, probably closer to $200, maybe $150, $170, something like that. But I sold those for $40 to see, hey, let's keep this going. I have a lot of parts that I can give away, and it doesn't really impact my business because I wasn't using those parts. So that happened. Those shipped. And now people are asking another important question. How do I get one of these things? Well, phase 3 of Adoptabot, we've got a website now. It's still, lightly used with light on information, but it does have these files, adoptabot.org. And maybe this will turn into a nonprofit. I want to reserve judgment on that until we see how this first phase 3 is going to go with Adoptabot. Here's how I'd like it to go. I want a $99 printer. I want to continue to give parts, but we will partner with the community. You know how when you train somebody, they watch you do it. That was phase 1. They do it with you. That's phase 2. They're printing the parts for the phase 2. And then phase 3, they do it themselves. So that's the phase we're in right now, and I just call it Adoptabot. The Adoptabot program, and it has its own website. I'm trying to separate Printrbot from it not trying, but I will if it goes nonprofit. Right now, it's our money that is funding this stuff. So I'm giving away a bunch of parts, and we're trying to get the community to help even further. So that's what we're talking about right now. So we're in the stage where it's like, oh my gosh, I need a lot of help, and it's getting real. There's easy stuff for me to do, like take one of my laptop power supplies out of the box and get it to where it needs to go to be included in the kit. That's no work. But wiring is a lot of work. Now, my wife actually has been doing a lot of wiring lately. And I'm specifically saying, like, me and Margie, this is a labor, Margie's my wife. It's a labor of love. Even my son has helped with this, Levi. And so me and Margie and Levi, and then I've had some off and on help from other people, but we're primarily trying to do this phase of the Adoptabot to get all of our, and I have some examples, to get all of our refurbished, sometimes the refurbished bots come in, returns come in. Sometimes returns are just a mess. People just abused them, kicked them around. I had one guy, do you remember that guy that sent the return? He was mad at us. He was like in the Caribbean.
Oh.
You remember that one? And I think he threw it in the ocean. And it came rusted. I mean, like fully rusted. Everything was rusted. It looked like it had been underwater for a week. And then I think he went and slammed it in a box, no padding, and he sent it back. Well, that I just threw away. But there are some that come in, and it's like, you know what, these guys abuse this so bad. We got to just strip it down, put the spare parts in a box, and I'll deal with it later. Well, that later has come. I was on the floor in my shop with my wife, and we've got this rat's nest of cables, and we've separated all of them. So I want to show you the type of work, and this is primarily focused at the people that would like to volunteer for the vitamins team, and it's called vitamins because Rep started in the UK with, what was his name? My gosh, I just blanked. The guy at Bath University, Adrian Boyer, I think. Boyer. Anyway, so he was a guy, and he called the hardware, the nuts and bolts, he called them vitamins. I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but I thought, that's kind of funny. It's the stuff that feeds your bot for a healthy bot. So I've used that terminology, but really, vitamins are the bag of nuts and bolts. This is not the Adoptabot bag of bolts. I'll tell you about that in a second. But so we have lots of hardware, nuts and bolts. We have lots of wire, but that wire needs to be reworked. And it is time-consuming. But I've separated these wires into separate boxes. And so, do we have a pair of snips? Could you grab me a pair of snips? Oh, there's one over there. So if you are on the vitamins team and are willing, check this out. This was a part that we did for, I think it was the Simple Makers Kit. We were grabbing 12, anyway, it doesn't matter. But there's some stuff on here you don't need. The old Rev D boards had a 4-pin connector. And now we use a 6-pin connector. Primarily that was to power, like I talked about earlier, all that amperage coming, or getting sucked out by the PCB heat bed. But I have easily a couple hundred of these, maybe 300. So when you get this, you don't need any of this. So I mean, yeah, you could try to recycle or save these housings or something. Frankly, you could probably do this right here, and then that could become something that you strip and solder onto the end stop for our short end stop. We have a very short end stop here. In fact, I unplugged it earlier. But there's a short run for an end stop here. And then there's one end stop up here. It's a little longer. But anyway, so we have some stuff that, you know, you could throw away part of it and you could reuse some. So we're upcycling, which is good. Now these aren't what's it called, Dave? Strippers or whatever, wire strippers. But if you do it right, you can do this. Okay, I've done it wrong. But anyway, these wires have to be snipped back a little bit. And then this actually goes into a pin. This is crimped. So it's a mechanical, it's a piece of metal wrapping around the wire and biting into it, and it won't let go. You don't have to solder that. You crimp it. So we have a special crimper that works for these pins. And what time is it? Oh, I have a watch. Maybe I should look at it. 5:11. I won't get into detail, but there's all kinds of crimpers. And if you're an electronics guy, you know what I'm talking about. You might have $1,000 in crimpers. But this particular crimp for this Molex connector, which will be a 6-pin, you don't need all 6 pins to run a bot that runs on PLA without a heat bed. So that would be fine to do 2 crimps. I have the housing that I can send you, and you click that into the housing. So then you have the power dongle for an Adoptabot. So if I have help from the community, you could be a one-trick pony and do that, and I'll provide the crimpers, the crimps, and the housing. And in a couple days, you could easily get 100 of these. So I have a bunch of these to send to a willing party, maybe in the vitamins group or somebody that will join the vitamins group. The vitamins group, I'm kind of thinking they're going to be kitting parts. Parts are going to be coming in, or maybe going out to separate places and then arriving at one facility that kits everything up for a nice wiring bag or a bearings bag or a hardware bag. So there's a lot of kitting involved. So that's one. Another one, the realization that came to me is I have it is manual. Well, it's partially automatic. So you have a foot pedal, and you stick this little bitty wire in there, and this is what my wife does. Stripped to the exact proper length, cut to the exact proper length. You go in there and you hit the pedal, and it goes conk conk. It'll take your finger off if you don't know how to use it, and it gets that little piece of metal on the end. Well, that metal is very specific. It's a Molex connector. This is somewhat tedious to do by hand because think about it. You've got 4 motors, so you need 4 various lengths of motor wire. So you got 4 colors, 4 lengths. And then you got a crimp on each. So that's 4 motors with 8 crimps, 2 housings. 8 times 4 motors is 32. So you got 32 different crimps. It's almost 100, no, not 100. 32 crimps to do one bot just for the motors. That is so time consuming. I've just said, you know what, I cannot put people through the pain. I can't do it. So Printrbot's going to be making the motor connectors. There's not a lot of motor wire lengths that we have because when I switched over to these type of motors, which is good and bad, these motors actually have, that I use, they have a little itty bitty connector on this side too. It's a 6-pin, but we use 4. And what's nice about this is any motor can work in any situation, so that's great. And then you can make a custom wire length. If you have an old bot from me way back in the day, we used to get motors with long wires, and I bought motors with the longest wire that I would need. So there'd be all this, you can probably see it in one of these. Look at this. You got all this extra wire up under here, like it's just messy, and I got tired of that. So we got our own wiring machines, and now we make the wire the perfect length for the bot. So in order to make this nice and neat, you got to make all the wires. So I'm going to make the motor wires, so I wanted to mention that. And then there are a big box of end stops of various lengths. This will be as simple as, if it's a short wire, you'll cut it to the, I think it's 3-inch. What does it say? It's maybe 2-inch. 2.5 or 3-inch. And yeah, 3-inch end stop. You'll cut that, you can save the wire, throw it away, and then we can solder on the proper length. And then there's a second length that's a little longer. So somebody with a soldering iron, that's all you'll need to rework the hot end wire box. So there's a need that we have. So far I have power dongles. I need somebody to do that, and that is crimping and housing, and this is soldering. So the fan, now here's a sticky wicket. The fan extension, that doesn't look long enough. But these wires, this was an older style fan extension. It had these straight pins. I need somebody to, might be some soldering, so you might have to take 2 cables to make it 1, or we'll see what is in the box, because there's some really, this is a short one, but there's some really long fan extensions. So we cut off that pin that we don't want to have to crimp these tiny, tiny little, they're cheap, but they're a pain in the butt because it doesn't key into, you can reverse the fan accidentally, and that is bad. So we have these directional, it has a clip, it only fits in one way. So when we get these fans, we pin these with this special connector that you can't put in upside down, and the polarity cannot be reversed. And it clips in there, so you can't pull it out. So with that clip, we need an extension to go down. So we got a box of red wire. Some of them have these on the end. It will either be soldering them together. It wouldn't be the end of the world if you had a wire that was too long. But you'll just go through that box and make sure that we have the proper fan power. Now, the same style cable and connector, but the reverse, goes to the hot end. So if we use our UBIS hot ends, or any hot end, it's a good idea to have these. The polarity doesn't really matter, but this clip is what does matter. So we need somebody that can take a bunch of the crimps that I provide, crimp them by hand, get the wire length right, crimp them by hand, put the right end on the right wire. These are, we switched recently to black wires on both plus and minus. The reason why we did that is people got worried about polarity, and on a hot end and a heat bed, the polarity does not matter. So you just don't have to worry yourself with that. So we didn't care if we plugged it in backwards or anything. There's no backwards. Doesn't matter. So that red and black box can be used to also, instead of just all black, to power the hot ends. So we got fan and power on that. Now, that uses the same crimp. What I'm trying to minimize is I don't want to have to buy 5 crimpers and send 15 different style crimps to the, everybody. We want one guy with the crimper or one girl with the crimper, and you can do a variety of, the male or female crimp, and you can make wires that involve that. So we got a bunch of these. And this is the thermistor. So you can see on this bot, the thermistor also uses, this is all white. It used to be white and black. Again, no polarity on measuring resistance, and that's what a thermistor is. So we've got the proper, let's see which one it is. This wire, yeah, this wire has the box end, or that would be the female end. So there, you can turn these in through a little bit of soldering and heat shrink to the proper length, or there'll be some in the box that have, there's not as many of these, but we can reclaim this stuff because this stuff adds up quick. It's hundreds of dollars. And so with a little bit of sweat equity, we can turn black and white wires to a simple 2-pin Molex on one side that plugs into your board, and this fancy connector on the other side, because the hot end comes with it done. So that's all the same style crimps. That is the fan, the thermistor, and the hot end use those same style crimps. So that's that. And then there are some red and black, just of various lengths that I've got in there. They need to be either repaired or cut down or whatever we want to do. Again, it wouldn't be bad to like zip tie that ball of wires, but I would really like to have these wired looms be really nice looking and you don't get all confused. Nothing worse than having somebody post a picture on Twitter of a Printrbot that they put together themselves, and they did a beautiful job mechanically putting together that bot. But then they show the wiring, and it's this terrible rat's nest of wires going everywhere, and nobody's used a zip tie. So anyway, I need wiring help, people. Last one. This is, I've just counted out 100 of these sensors. And this sensor simply needs this. It's a Molex connector, my favorite. It's the most common. It's all of the white connectors that plug into the board. So the sensor on this one, we don't use an extension.
we just use the wire that comes with this. So we order these, and it's that long. And it doesn't need to be that long. It needs to be less long. So you'll cut it to length. You'll strip this back. And then when you strip it back, you'll have this right here, 3 wires. And then when you cut that to the proper length, you'll be able to crimp it and then click, 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 put it in the housing in the right order. Very much matters the order of colors on this sensor because one of them is providing power. And that acts as your end stop for the Z. So we need some help. It's pretty basic work. I even have a email here, and now that I've got my ducks in a row, I can respond to him. This is Steve. He says, let's see, where is it? I teach high-level 8th grade students who are excited to help anyone they can in getting 3D printers in their hands of schools without them. I feel confident that we can assemble kits, fabricate the wiring kits, package and sort and create filament. He's going for it. I love this. I have a yet used extrusion bot filament maker I bought a couple years ago. So we got to get Steve hooked up with our extrusion group. But anyway, so he was basically says, let's see, he has a master's degree in curriculum specialty and can help gather and write curriculum. And this particular gentleman, I told him it's a rat's nest, and I just couldn't send the rat's nest out to anybody. So I culled through it and really got organized. So it's going to be a lot less work. But what's interesting is he says he lives in Texas. They got hit by the hurricane, and they were like, hey, we need something while we're out of his, I think they were actually out of the school. I don't have the details here. But anyway, he was like, this will be great for the kids. And so I've got a couple of emails like that. Now I'm ready to release this stuff. I got to find addresses and who's willing, who has the ability to do this stuff. So I do need help. Also, I need help with the boards. I don't have one in here, but I have those, probably 300 printer boards, somewhere around there. Maybe it's more. Various models. And I need qualified electronics guys, because I had like 2 or 3 guys say, yeah. But I haven't been able to get them to respond. So we do have a need for somebody to just take the boards, and the first thing you do is flash the firmware and see if it'll work. A lot of times they will reflash and they will work. The heat bed doesn't have to work. You're not using one. There's some that would require an end stop instead of a auto level sensor, but we can just change a printed part and have that Z be adjustable with the screw. So anyway, we got a lot of potential, thousands and thousands of dollars of printer boards that I will donate. I need somebody to help me go through them and fix them. When you don't sell a model of an electronics board, you don't have a big incentive to just like, hey, let's get this working. It goes in a bin. Not the bin, not the trash bin, but it goes in a box, and we wait for opportunities like this to give them away, but we need a little help going through them. So that's another need. Last thing, this was actually, I don't know what I was thinking, or maybe it was my sourcing guy, Dave, that was not thinking when he ordered me several thousand kits prepackaged from Fastenal for the Maker's Kit. And we sold a lot of Maker's Kits. We probably sold thousands. But I have this bag times 1 pallet full. I have at least 16 boxes of this, and they all weigh like 50 or 60 pounds. I have more nuts and bolts than I know what to do with. It just so happens this includes a little extra kit for an older extruder, the Alu V1, which is the one I'm using on there, the one that we can print. So the beauty of this is I've gone through, you can see my notes. I've gone through and I've said, okay, what's in here? And I've checked, hey, we don't have to kit that extruder bag up because it's already in here. It's brilliant. It cost me nothing now. And then I started to go through the other ones, and there's indeed some other stuff that we needed that's already here. But I've received some comments from people that were like, what are plastites? I don't know where to get plastites. Well, you can get them at McMaster Carr, but I agree. They're a little bit obscure. They are used for plastic application. While I had dreams of using the exact right screws for that design, the truth is M3 metric screws, which are available worldwide, very easy to source, they do work in most cases. So I'm going to go through this design. I have a list of changes that I have yet to make. It'll be version 1.2. But one of them is I'm going to go through this bag and try to utilize as much of this hardware as possible. And then my vitamins kit team will have very little to do. There will be very few parts left, and I can send boxes of those, and they can throw one of these bags in. And yeah, there'll be about 100, okay, 45 M316 screws you don't want, but it's not worth the time to like, okay, let's take those out. Let's just give them some extra screws. It's kind of a mess in there, but again, free, so we're upcycling. It's a good thing. All right, I know that's boring for people that don't care about that stuff, but that was the Adoptabot stuff. Now I got another letter I want to read, and we'll show you the last printer, and we'll get out of here. This is.
Sound check. You're welcome to if you want.
I'm reading it now.
Okay.
It's a dad that got a gift for Father's Day. It's an older bot, and essentially he's thanking us. It's a really nice letter. So thank you, Todd, for the nice note. And he's got pictures here. Wow, that's an older model. That's a junior. That's awesome. It is really great, by the way. We here, and Dave, who's in charge of customer support, I know I let it out of the bag, Dave, but he has a lot of knowledge in his head and on the forums that he's created and tutorials and stuff. We've got a couple of guys that are part-time that do that. Heather here helps us. And I got to tell you, a lot of when you do customer support, you don't get letters like this often. You get, this doesn't work, fix it, you guys are crooks, you know, that kind of stuff. So please do. If you have a nice note, send it to customer support or send it to me. And I don't do it as much. When kids write me, I post them. I used to post them up above the little kitchenette. But we'd love to hear from you, even on Twitter. If you got something good to say it. All right. So one quick announcement. Did you get that link live? Okay. Quick announcement, and then we'll show you this bot, and we'll get out of here. Make sure. Okay, new files, check. Adoptabot, check. Heat bed, man, went on and on that one. 24, okay, got it. All right, so Bot Spa. We are discontinuing Bot Spa at Printrbot. I'm going to let that sink in a little bit. We are discontinuing the Bot Spa here at Printrbot. Why? I've hinted at this before. Because we have a community member that has stepped up and wants to take on that part of our business. Now, it's few and far between, to be honest. Who this is targeted at is somebody that has a printer, and it worked for a while, but the more they used it, the more it kind of fell out of tuning. Whether that was through misuse or something happened, maybe it was a weird anomaly, but they have a printer that they don't really have the desire, or maybe it's the knowledge and the expertise to like turn some screws, to troubleshoot some motors or something like that. So they have this bot that they spent, hundreds of dollars on that does not work. And it's like, you know what? That stinks. I want that to work. What do I do? Can I send it to Printrbot? Well, you used to be able to do that. And we had this deal that used to be $35, and we'd say, yeah, ship it here and pay your $35, and we'll do this little, it's kind of like if you go to a shop with your car. It doesn't work, and you bring it in, and you pay a little money, and they tell you what's wrong. And then you have a decision. Do you want to fix this thing? And if you do, then you have a shop rate, and then you get parts, and you can fix it, and we'll ship it back. Well, we used to do that, but it's kind of less frequent now, and I'm trying to streamline as much as I can here. And so this gentleman, do you remember his name? It's horrible. What? Todd. Is that right? Tom. Or Todd. It starts with a T. Sorry, I get a lot of email. But anyway, so we've gone back and forth discussing what we can do to support him. How are we going to do this? Well, here's how we're going to do it. The Bot Spa will live on with our new technician that is not located at Printrbot. So the same service. Hey, we're back. Sorry. I talked this thing out of battery, which I always hate because it says I'm going too long. So sorry about that. We're back, Printrbot Live. It's Brooke Drum from Printrbot. I just wanted to tell you, I don't remember, I don't know when it went off. I don't really pay attention. Was it Adoptabot?
It was after you said his name Todd or Tom.
Okay. So anyway, I was telling you about the bot spa. It's not going to, Tom, it's going to be the bot spa, which is if you got a bot that doesn't work and you want somebody to tune it up. A gentleman named Tom is going to take that on for us from now on. So to contact him, you can go to our bot spa page and it will give you his email. He's given me permission to post that. We are going to be providing him with parts at just over cost. So we're going to give him boxes and parts and knowledge, and he's already very knowledgeable. We're going to give him some printers so he has his hands on all of the relevant printers and experience to be able to fix all of those. He's got almost all of them, or at least he has a few of them. So anyway, I'm excited about Tom joining our extended family. Now, it's not Printrbot per se. It's Tom, not just a fan, but a qualified technician. And we're going to start forwarding, or at least we're posting that, and asking you to get in contact with him to see if we can get this thing into the hands of community. Because really, I really truly mean this. Now, my technicians are really good. They can fix anything. But the reason they can fix anything is because if we have to, we'll strip the thing down to bare bones and just rebuild it, right? Well, there's community members that are every bit as qualified. I mean, they could work here. But they don't want to move here, and I don't want them to move here. So we'll move your printer to them. And so expect a possible price increase on the initial. I'm recommending he charges $50. But it'll be a great service for that $50, and he will ask you, hey, here's what I found, and here's what I think I need to replace. Here's what I was able to fix. But we have to go a little bit further if you want to. If not, we'll give the bot back, and just like a car at a shop, you don't have to do it. So that's Bot Spa, and I want to thank Tom. He's been very, very professional in his emails. He's thinking through this really, really well. It's the type of care that I was really looking forward to hand this off to somebody that is really trustworthy. So I wish him luck, and you won't be able to get Bot Spa through Printrbot. You'll be able to get it through Printrbot Community, and Tom is going to kick that off. If there's others that are interested in that, the benefit would be people all over the place be qualified technicians. And I also recommend you fix other printers from other brands. It's not an exclusive Printrbot thing. You're getting a true expert that can fix any printer you have. And I say that with a great amount of confidence because I can fix any printer you have. I might replace it with a printer board and a UBIS hot end, but I can fix anything. So that's the kind of guy you're going to get with Tom. So anyway, check that out. All right, let's take a look at this printer, and then let's get out of here. I'm over here, Dave. All right, so this is what I have been referring to as the Model 3. But from here on out, we're calling it the 5400. Why? Because the first guy that is going to sell this is going to be Jeff at Create O&P. This is also shipping out to another guy that contacted me. He got a grant for his university in California. He does some prosthetic work, but they do work in other fields as well. And he thought, no, that is really what I've been looking for. There's other models that have gone big, but I've taken great pains. Me and Mark have designed this. I did the initial, and like I tell you, I've had my engineers for years take my sloppy work and make it really pristine. And so Mark has helped with this, so he deserves a lot of credit. But the original design, the idea is that it's made from, it's not all done yet, so it's just running free right now. But I finally caved and went to the Z dropping with one lead screw. So there'd be a lead screw right here. The motor will be on top. The lead screw will, I don't even think this is centered yet, but the lead screw lifts it. So you got, instead of on the plus where you have to like do this dance or cross your arms and like get the plus to move up and down because it has two contact points, this has a single one. So it will be a 4-start bar, and it is going, that's a lot of weight, so, but when you have an Acme rod, it's like a screw, so it's going to be fine. So this is going to lift up and down. It's going to start up here, and as it prints, it's going to drop. Now you can level this bed, so this bed does have 3 screws. It's 3 points that you can level this when it's up here at the top. And then this is, it's not an H-bot, if you know what this is. excuse me, this is a Cartesian bot. So this is exactly the style that we're using in the Printrbot, in the prosthetic. It's very, very light. Even though it has a motor on it, it's very light, and it'll not move that fast, but you've got a lot of simplicity under here. So I wanted to just show you. Dave, I don't know if you're going to be able to get this, but if you can, look down in here. Can you see down in there? So what I've done with Mark is we really, really, really worked hard to keep everything very, very simple. And when you have a water jet, it's great to cut flat parts. It reminds me of when I was designing for like the Simple Makers Kit or the Early Pluses and LC. When you only have flat panels, you don't want to have to bend it. We're using 1/4 inch on the bed, Mic 6 aluminum. When you heat that, there could very well be some warpage in this, but this bot is not for high precision. Now it may do that, but we put a high flow on it, and we're going to use a bigger nozzle because we want to go fast. We believe that if you're doing manufacturing of parts that you're going to actually use, and prosthetics are exactly that. It's less about the fine details, and it's more about the strength and the speed of the print. So we've kept everything flat if we could. So you can see right now, this crossbar, which is connected across, is just flat. This is a folded piece here that keeps it pretty simple, and it's like 3/16. But the rest of this stuff is flat. I'll move it back. It's kind of heavy. But the reason I wanted flat is because this is a big piece of metal. I didn't want to ship a whole case. So if you can imagine, there's 8 bolts, looks like right now, we could add more, connecting the top plate to the aluminum extrusion. But this aluminum extrusion we're getting as a kit from an extrusion manufacturer, and that will fit in like a flat pack. It'll fit in this just extrusion. You can order that separately. In fact, this plate on the top and this back plate, flat piece, and I don't know if you saw from the construction, but these are all made of flat pieces. So this will all flat pack as a kit. And so people that are building big printers, I see them online, and they design some of the craziest stuff. I think it's really ingenious to use the tools that you have. But if you want a rigid bot that is the simplest mechanism for Cartesian Core XY, not Core XY, gosh, Cartesian bot with flat pieces and all the spacing figured out, there's going to be some printed parts on here. But it is about the simplest you can make and get the biggest print volume. So that's what we're doing. We are going to be testing this week, shipping it next week to a couple of guys that have already paid, and we'll evaluate if we've got a winner on our hands here. And if so, I'm going to sell this top panel already put together. I don't know. I guess there's no need to put it together, but I might even just sell it put together. Could be a kit. But then you make the decision on how tall you want it to go. So if you only need a bot that's this tall, order your own extrusion, and it's just a box. Put it together. But this whole Z plate here, actually, you can see it move right now. Look at that. It's moving. It's because it's just being built for the first time. But this whole Z package bolts together and can use any length rod. It's no connections between here, only the top and the bottom. So this could be built at a height of 1 foot, a height of 8 inches, I mean, whatever you want. Now, you get to the point at which this bed gets so heavy, you don't want to do it any bigger. But this is the first size, 2 foot tall, 1.5 feet wide, and 1 foot deep. This is a really nice size. The reason I like this size is it could sit on the floor if you wanted to, or you could get it up on a regular table, and it would be about the right height, but not so high that you couldn't just see what was going on. But it's simple. It'll be, I don't know how much money, don't ask me. But this thing is intended to be a kit. If you want a big bot, you could save yourself a lot of time by ordering one of these and going with this design. I've tried many different designs on these big bots. This is the one that I'm really happy with, so I'm ready to sell it. We will sell the whole kit if you want, but again, this will flat pack in something like this, the size of a large suitcase, and you could put it on a plane, take it to a third world country, or whatnot. So this is the Model 3, or also known as the 5400. So coming soon, wanted to show it to you. Thanks for being with us this week. Sorry about the interruption in between the first part of the video and the last. That's pretty much it, Dave. I think that's it. So have a good week, and I will see you next week with more news from Printrbot. Take care.